France press reports that bodies of Albanian mercenaries are returned to their relatives after being killed in Syria. The Syrian Arab Army units kill and wound many terrorists in the countrysides of Damascus, Hama, Deir ez-Zor, and al-Assad. The Shura Majlis in Iran begins its vote of confidence in the new government, and President Rouhani asserts that his policy is based on defending Iranian rights. Good afternoon, this is News in English. A Syrian Arab Army unit dealt a heavy blow to terrorist groups near the point of 7 kilometers in Deir ez-Zor, killing several terrorists, including the Yemeni terrorist called al-Bashiq. The army destroyed weapons and ammunition of the terrorists, and in the industry quarter, the dead terrorists included Qasim Saleh Mubarak and Abdurrahman Aish al-Ujaili, of a gang calling itself the Banner of the Lions and Monotheism. The army destroyed another group of terrorists in the city, killing Abdul Salam Maryam, leader of a gang calling itself the Battalion of Ibn al-Qayyim, in the countryside of the governorate. The army inflicted heavy casualties among the terrorists of another gang and destroyed their weapons and equipment. A Syrian Army unit inflicted heavy casualties among the terrorists after targeting their groups in the village of Beit Ablaq in the northern countryside of Latakia. An official source said that the dead terrorists included Abu Muawiyah, leader of the so-called Banner of Islam in Syria and Iraq, and the Tunisian Abu Huzaifa, leader of the so-called Muhajirin battalion, in addition to destruction of their weapons, equipment and ammunition, including heavy machine guns they were using. And in Aleppo, a Syrian Arab Army unit confronted terrorists who were trying to infiltrate into the quarter of Bustan al-Zahra, killing most of them near the mosque of Huzaifa ibn al-Yaman and destroying their weapons and ammunition. As usual, the TV channels supporting these terrorist groups tried to raise the morale of the terrorists by claiming that they controlled this quarter. The Syrian Arab Army units found during its chasing to the terrorist groups in Daraya and Damascus countryside a terrorist hideout, which contained large quantities of weapons, ammunition, medicines and stolen medical equipment. An official source said that the seized weapons included PKC machine guns, military automatic rifles, advanced communication devices, RPG launchers, explosive devices and varieties of ammunition. The Syrian Arab Army units also eliminated several terrorists to the west of Sukaina Shrine and killed. The terrorists included Khalid Kharji, and the injured terrorists included the so-called Abu Omar al-Hanash, the leader of one of the terrorist groups who was seriously injured in the operation. Eleven citizens were killed and 20 others were wounded when the terrorists fired rocket missiles on residential areas in the center of al-Salamiya town in the governorate of Hama. The wounded were taken to the national hospital in the city to receive treatment. Another citizen was killed and others wounded when a terrorist gang attacked a bus full of civilian citizens in the Hama countryside. On the other hand, a Syrian Arab Army unit repulsed a terrorist attack on a roadblock in al-Salamiya, inflicting heavy casualties among the terrorists, several of whom were Saudis, Egyptians and Sudanese. In the Hama countryside, units of the Syrian Arab Army confronted a terrorist gang that was trying to attack the roadblock of al-Kafat in al-Salamiya, inflicting heavy casualties among them. 8 citizens were wounded when an explosive device blew off on the highway between the towns of al-Nasira and al-Ahwash in the Homs countryside. The explosion also caused material damage in the houses, shops and passing by cars. The Asian news agency said in a report that the terrorist Abdel Basit al-Tunisi was killed in Latakia countryside. He was imprisoned for 6 years in Guantanamo under the name of Adel al-Tunisi. The agency added that the terrorist belonged to al-Qaeda and gained great military experience during his fighting in the mountains of Afghanistan. The American paper World Tribune said that the Muslim Brotherhood transferred their activities from Egypt to Syria after the Egyptian army removed them from power. The paper added that the Muslim Brothers were recruiting thousands of extremists to fight against the Syrian army and giving them Saudi financial support. A report by the agency of France Press asserted that extremist mercenaries were sent from the Balkan countries to fight in Syria without the knowledge of their families until they were returned dead in coffins. The report exposed the way of taking these fighters to Syria across Turkey.
Even the mass media of the countries which support terrorism in Syria have begun to expose the flow of such terrorists under the pretext of looking for jobs in Turkey, which ensures sending them to Syria. The report presented interviews with the families and relatives of the dead terrorists. These included a woman who told the agency of France Press that her husband Khalil went to work in Turkey. However, a letter told her that her husband was killed in Syria. Another Albanian called Ermal Khielo told his mother that he was going to Turkey to work. 2 months later, his body was brought from Syria. The report said that these terrorists are taken by plane to Istanbul and then sent by bus to the Syrian borders, where they continue on foot in small groups till they are met by a person who takes them to the field to fight against the Syrian Arab army. Many terrorists from Albania, Serbia, Kosovo, Morocco, and other African countries were brought by American intelligence to Syria for jihad. The agency of France Press asserted that they are later taken to their families in coffins, if coffins were found for them.
The Iranian Shura Council started the vote over the trust given to the 18 ministers in the new Iranian cabinet by President Hassan Rouhani, as the vote will be started on next Wednesday. President Rouhani addressed in a speech the council members, saying that his priorities will be in improving the economic situation and the nuclear program. Rouhani criticized the West policies towards his country, stressing that his policy goes contrary to the Iranian community basic needs as they aim to submit Iran in its nuclear program. The Iranian president clarified that his new government policy, as it is based on the diplomacy and defending Iran's rights, especially its right to possess nuclear power for peaceful purposes. Many official and cultural figures participated in the funeral of the famous Syrian poet Suleiman al-Isa, who passed away at the age of 92.
He was buried at the Sheikh Rislan cemetery in Damascus. The renowned Syrian poet Suleiman al-Isa is one of the most prominent Arab contemporary poets who has dedicated much of his poetry to national and pan-Arab issues. The late poet had also dedicated a large part of his poetry to childhood, which he regarded as the last refuge for the aspirations of the Arab nation. Suleiman al-Isa was born in 1921 in the village of Nuwayriya near the city of Antioch in Liwa, Iskenderun. He received his first education in his village and later in Antioch, and continued his secondary education in Hama and Damascus. Given an Iraqi scholarship, he attended the Teachers Training Institute in Baghdad, and after graduation he returned to Syria to take up a post as a first instructor of Arabic language at the Ministry of Education. He started writing poetry at the age of 10, and his first collection of poetry described the misery and weariness of the peasants in his village. His nationalist poems contributed to the demonstrations and the national struggle of his fellow citizens of Iskenderun. After the separation of his native district Liwa from Syria, he emigrated to other parts of Syria to continue with his friends the fight against the French mandate. Al-Isa was one of the founders of the Arab Writers Union in Syria in 1969. He spoke French and English in addition to Arabic and Turkish. In cooperation with his wife, he contributed in translating many literary books from English and French into Arabic, mostly Algerian books originally written in French. In October 1982, he received the Afro-Asian Writers Union Lotus Prize for Poetry. In 1984, his poetical works for children received the prize of the Arab League's Educational, Cultural, and Scientific Organization. In 1990, he was elected as a member of the Arab Language Academy in Damascus. In 2005, he was granted the Syrian Order of Merit Excellent degree. Among the most famous books by the poet are the poetical works, The Path of a Lifetime, The Woman in My Poetry, in addition to collections of stories and tales for children.
With this, we end our news for today. Thank you for watching. More details on Syria and the region, and to view this news bulletin again, you can visit our website in English, www.syriaonline.sy. Stay with us after the break. New technology in agricultural marketing and new industrial law in our economic news after the break. France Press reports that bodies of Albanian mercenaries are returned to their relatives after being killed in Syria. Begins its vote of confidence in the new government, and President Rouhani asserts that his policy is based on defending Iranian rights. Good afternoon, this is News in English. The Syrian Arab Army units kill and wound many terrorists in the countrysides of Damascus, Hama, Deir ez-Zor, and al-Assad. Shura Majlis in Iran. A Syrian Arab Army unit dealt a heavy blow to terrorist groups near the point of 7 kilometers in Deir ez-Zor, killing several terrorists, including the Yemeni terrorist called al-Bashaq. The army destroyed weapons and ammunition of the terrorists, and in the industry quarter that the terrorists